against Karnataka BJP for Hitler Indira jibe. BJP posted and deleted the Indira Hitler post.
அதில் தமிழிலிருந்து பிறந்தது தான் உங்கள் பாஷை, அதனால் நீங்களும் அதில் உட்படுவீர்கள்.
फोन उठाया, कहा मोदी जी क्या कर रहे हो? नरेंद्र सरेंडर.
Why I need RCB? Even I don't drink the Royal Challenge also.
Every one of these statements hurt my sentiments. So what? Now, as a Bangalorean, here are a few things that I can say about the city. The only time the entire city speaks Kannada is when people go Guru, Isaga Kap Nambe. And also the people who know Kannada don't necessarily only speak Kannada. And I also don't believe that freebies are a healthy economic tool. And I feel like they're often confused with welfare schemes. Do you disagree with what I said? That's alright. Because isn't that what freedom of speech is all about? But have you ever thought of something and then typed it and then deleted it because you thought, what if someone takes offense? What if I get into trouble? What if my social media or my social circle is targeted? Or worse, what if someone lodges an FIR against me? Freedom of speech has always been a point of contention under all governments. However, recent incidents during Operation Sindoor, like one of Ashoka University's Dr. Ali Muhammad and another of Sarmishta Panovi, a Pune-based law student and a newly minted social media influencer, has caught everyone's attention and opinion more than usual. Commonality? Both opinionated, both vocal, both arrested, both jailed, both now out on bail. And what was said in both of these cases were that sentiments are heard. And we aren't saying this. The courts did. And now Kamal Hassan's PR team clearly did not get the message either, because he too hopped on the bandwagon of violators for making a factually incorrect claim without much thinking. Now the result? He moved to the Karnataka High Court for protection as the timing of the controversy just collided with the release of his film. And Rajkumar Films International filed a petition to the High Court saying that the Karnataka Film Chamber of Commerce stopped their film's release due to pressure from some Kannada groups. Ironically enough, RFKI argued that this violated their fundamental right of speech and expression. And here's what went down.
Sir, you may be Kamala Hassan, you may be
it doesn't
anybody.
matter who he is, I'm
No,
not saying
you may be anybody.
Yes.
You have no right, any citizen has no right to hurt the sentiment of the masses.
Well, guess what? It's not that we agree or disagree with Dr. Ali, Sarmishta or Kamal Hassan. But someone do tell the courts that their statements also hurt our sentiments every now and then. Why? Because we are humans. We have feelings. We have the right to feel, think, assume, understand and interpret words however we choose. And clearly, freedom of speech and expression is where the game seems rigged. Now tell me, how do I realistically express myself without fearing a hurt sentiment? And how do we really define masses? Do I keep the 1.4 billion sentiments in mind or my 300 followers on Instagram before making a statement? As per the Indian Constitution, Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause 8 discusses the freedom of speech and expression. And before we get into this further, let's quickly visit the Constitution of India Bill of 1895, aka the Swaraj Bill, that was written during the emergence of Indian nationalism under British colonialism to understand freedom of speech in the 19th century. The Swaraj Bill stated every citizen may express his thoughts by words or writings and publish them in print without liability to censure, but they shall be answerable for abuses which they may commit in the exercise of this right, in the cases and in the mode the Parliament shall determine. We seem to have inherited these restrictions into our freedom of speech right all through the 19th, 20th and 21st centuries, with and without British imperialism. Now, interestingly, when the Constituent Assembly drafted Article 19, there were many debates on the restrictions because these restrictions were too wide. How could one be sure that it wouldn't replicate the restrictions of colonial era that once silenced Indians? Now we know that every article is susceptible to change, and in the case of Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause 8, the only ever amendment was brought in 1951, which was also the first ever amendment, just 2 years after the Constitution was passed and adopted. What brought in this amendment? Let's find out. The 1951 amendment widened the grounds for imposing reasonable restrictions on Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause A by amending Article 19, Clause 2. The first amendment sought to insert the words friendly relations with foreign state, public order, and incitement of offence to the reasonable restrictions. Why? Well, by 1951, the Nehru government was already facing mounting challenges over free speech, particularly in cases concerning the press. Newspapers and journals, including the RSS organizer and Ramesh Thappar's Crossroads, particularly challenged state policies, criticized leaders, and amplified voices of opposition. One key case was Ramesh Thappar versus the state of Madras in 1950. Thappar's magazine Crossroads was banned by the Madras government for criticizing Nehru's policies. The Supreme Court struck down the ban, saying that it violated Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause A, the right to free speech. Around the same time, in Brij Bhushan versus the state of Delhi, the court also rejected a government attempt to impose a pre-censorship on the newspaper Swatantra Bharat, which had been accused of spreading communal tension. The court ruled that such censorship was unconstitutional. To keep the communal rhetoric in check, Nehru brought up the need for the First Amendment. Every freedom in the world is limited, Nehru declared in the parliament, and he made this case for restraining the press. Freedom, he argued, required a measure of balance, something that the press, in his view, often lacked. They cannot have it both ways, no balance and freedom, he said. So on June 18, 1951, with 228 votes in favor, 20 against and around 50 abstentions, the amendment was passed. Now, it is worth thinking if these restrictions contradict the very freedom, or if the problem is that these restrictions have not been defined well enough and clearly have not evolved to fit the present day context. Now, the laughter stopped when Ranveer Agha Bhatia and Samay Raina found themselves in a pickle. So, let's discuss concepts of morality and public order with free speech to understand exactly how courts measure it using both new and old case examples. Now, the Indian law says that being obscene is the same thing as being indecent. Back in 1868, in a British courtroom, came a test called the Hickman test. It asked, does this content have the power to corrupt the minds of the vulnerable? And fast forward to 1968, India's Supreme Court said, yes, we will go with that, when it upheld the conviction of a bookseller for selling Lady Chatterley's Lover. Yeah, a book by D.H. Lawrence, apparently too scandalous for Indian morality. However, take this 1972 case. In Kishori Mohan versus State of West Bengal, the Supreme Court explained the differences between three concepts: law and order, public order, and security of state. As per the court, anything that disturbed public peace or public tranquility disturbed public order. But mere criticism of the government does not necessarily disturb public order. However, it also stated that a law punishing the utterances deliberately tending to hurt the religious feelings of any class has been held to be valid, as it is a reasonable restriction aimed at maintaining public order. And if you remember LOP Rahul Gandhi's dig at PM Modi with Chaukidar Chor Hai,
the Chaukidar and the Chor. And he talks to himself at night. One day he becomes the Chaukidar, one day becomes the Chor.
let's also take a look at what the court said when it closed the contempt case. We do believe that persons holding such important positions in the political spectrum must be more careful as to what should be his campaign line is for a political person to consider. However, the court, or for that matter, no court, should be dragged into this political discourse, valid or invalid, while attributing aspects to the court which had never been held by the court. Certainly, Mr. Gandhi needs to be more careful in the future. The only thing we can take away for sure is that the understanding of freedom of speech is highly subjective and it's not truly free. There can be a cost to pay.
Indians are very passe about death threats anyway. You threaten an American's family, they feel triggered. You can look at an Indian and be like, Tere baap. To maar ke uska khoon pi jaunga. You can say that to an Indian person out loud and we'll be like, okay.
Yeah, today we are more connected and privacy is nearly impossible. So what is the possible cost of free speech given these restrictions and the understanding of free speech? Galis, death threats, rape threats, FIRs. So to get back to the other legal issues, we have sedition, we have defamation, and even UAPA, which interjects one's freedom of speech under specific circumstances. Sedition, for instance, under section 152 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, now states that whoever purposely or knowingly by words, either spoken or written, or by signs, or by visible representation, or by electronic communication, or by use of financial means, or otherwise excites or attempts to excite secession or armed rebellion or subversive activities, or encourages feelings of separatist activities, or endangers sovereignty or unity and integrity of India, or indulges in or commits any such act, shall be punished with imprisonment for life or with imprisonment which may extend to 7 years, and shall also be liable to fine. That's a mouthful. On the other hand, Section 356 of the BNS defines defamation as making or publishing false statements with the intent to harm or with the knowledge that it will harm another person's reputation. BNS Section 113 also mirrors the UAPA Unlawful Activities Prevention Act with penalties of up to life imprisonment or capital punishment. Now here's the thing. UAPA defines acts that cause or are intended to cause disaffection against India as an unlawful activity. Disaffection? Where do we start measuring degrees of disaffection, and how vague is that? Possibly anything can be interpreted as disaffection under this law. Finally, let's quickly understand this in terms of numbers and some outliers when it comes to the effect of freedom of speech and expression on society and its citizens. We need to remember that a policy or a law isn't without its pros and cons. Instead, it all depends on the intent of its application and the end goal behind it. So in 2025, the cost of speaking one's mind is steep. In just first 4 months of this year, as per the Free Speech Collective, an Indian organization, India has logged 329 documented violations of free speech and 283 cases targeting journalists, students, artists, and everyday citizens for what they said, wrote, or posted.
And guess what? It's not just a trend, it's tradition.
When looking at the correlation between speech and expression and their probable effect, few government actions could not be faulted between the Pahalgam and the Operation Sindoor phase. Examples: in the aftermath of the 2025 Pahalgam attacks, 2 YouTube news channels, Knocking News and 4PM News, were blocked. 4PM News was accused of threatening national security as their content did risk India's safety during the conflict. Moreover, 16 Pakistani YouTube channels were banned. Over 8,000 X or Twitter Pakistani accounts were blocked, and India imposed a media blackout on Pakistan. The Union government had also told The Wire that its website had been blocked in India on May 9th, citing technical limitations over a story on the Rafale jet deal. The Wire took down the story to restore its website. Fair enough, because at a time of crisis, national integrity is what we need the most. This does bring us to a crossroads, however. Should the law protect liberty or prioritize order? The debate isn't going away. The only certainty is that the line will keep shifting, redrawn by lawmakers, judges, and a society that must decide how much freedom are we willing to lose in the name of protecting it. And will India ever love free speech enough, even when you stop disagreeing? Is there something that you've been wanting to say, but are scared to actually say it? Well, this is a safe space, and that's what the comment section is for, so go ahead and drop your thoughts down below.